Hi, I'm John McCarthy, president of Rockhouse Audio and Videotapes for Guitar and Bass. I'd like to take this chance to introduce Steve Gorenberg, one of bass guitar's best-kept secrets of the 1990s. His blazing bass techniques you're going to see throughout this whole 4 videotape series. Also, I'd like to take this chance to tell you that Steve also has an audio series available as a beginning, intermediate, and advanced series. And also, Rockhouse has available for you a guitar series for video and audio cassettes. Rockhouse, we have our motto that we're teachers trying to show you how to learn your instrument. We're not rock stars trying to show you how to play our songs. We want you to become your own musician, learn how to play your own style, and create your own style. So pick up your instruments, start playing, and get working hard. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Steve, and he's going to show you how to get some blazing bass techniques right now.
Hi, I'm Steve Gorenberg. I'm your bass instructor for the Rockhouse bass videos, and this is tape number 2, the intermediate tape of a 4-tape series. On this tape, we're going to start off with an intense warm-up of coordination exercises to really get some blood pumping into your hands and get you moving. Then we're going to go through a quick review of what we covered on tape 1, just in case you weren't with us. Continuing on, we'll go into the natural minor scale. We're going to cover the minor pentatonic scales in all positions, and we're going to spend a bit of time on these. These are going to be your most important scales for rock and metal bass soloing and bass riffs that you're going to play in your songs. It's going to show you how to create your own style using these scales. Later on in the tape, we'll be going into things like arpeggios. We're going to do some two-handed bidextral hammer-ons, also harmonics, and we're going to move the scales into other keys. We're going to show you how to move your scales around into other keys, and later on we'll cover the blues scales and the major pentatonic scales. Now, one point I'd like to make, again, take each lesson slowly. Don't go on to the next lesson until you've covered everything in the lesson that you're working on. You want to make sure that you've got everything down so that you're not lost later on. Take it slow. Try not to cover the whole tape in one day. You might want to take one lesson a week or whatever's suited to your pace. Now, another thing that might help you out is in the front inside cover of each book, there's a neck diagram which will show you where every note is on the bass. The back inside cover will have a tablature explanation. If you're not sure about reading tablature right now, if you weren't with us for tape number 1, you could take a look through that before you get started. And also there's a glossary in the back of each book. In the back of this book, if you hear me say any terms that you're not too sure of, you can look it up in the glossary and you might find a quick definition for it there. Get your book and your bass and we'll get started with lesson number 1 in just a minute. Hi, and welcome back to lesson number 1. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody can tune to me. Now, I'm tuned to an electronic tuner to A440, so if you have an electronic tuner and you tune to it, you'll be in tune to play along with the tape. If not, you can tune to me now. I'm going to play my first string G. Now the second string, D. Third string, A. And finally the fourth string, E. Okay, now that everybody's in tune, we're going to go on to lesson number 1. Turn to page 1 in your books, and we're going to go over the chromatic scale exercise. This is an exercise in open position all the way down at the 1st fret of the bass. And follow along with me as I go through this slowly. The first measure on the top tablature staff, all the notes are on the 4th string, E. We're going to start off by playing that string open, then the 1st fret with your 1st finger, 2nd fret with your 2nd finger, 3rd fret with your 3rd finger, 4th fret with your 4th finger. On to the next measure. On the 3rd string, A, open, 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret. And you'll notice that as I do this, I'm not moving my hand to reach the frets. What will help you is if you stretch your fingers out. You might feel that it's uncomfortable right now, but it's really going to help you get comfortable with playing later on. So don't start moving your hand up the neck like this. Rather, lay your fingers down, spreading them out as you lay your fingers down on each note. The second measure, you'll also notice, has repeat signs around it, so we're going to play through that twice. The third measure, let's go on to that, you also play that twice, and that's on the second string D. Same pattern. Open, first fret, second, third, fourth, and repeat that again. Onto the first string G. Same pattern. There's no repeat signs around it, so you only play this measure once. Also remember to keep alternating your fingers on your right hand. Now I'm going to play through this at a faster speed, just the top tablature staff. Now the bottom tablature staff is the exact same exercise, but backwards. And you can use this as a warm-up for your playing every day when you first pick up your bass. It'll stretch your fingers out and get you to move. It also helps with coordinating your right and left hands at the same time. Now I'll play through the whole exercise up and back for you at a fast speed. Now turn in your books to page number 2. We're going to go over the chromatic scale. Now a chromatic scale, just like that chromatic scale exercise, is a scale that proceeds through the musical alphabet a half step at a time, one fret at a time, right up the bass. We just did the chromatic scale in open position. I'm going to show you how to do this scale in a closed position, meaning not using any open strings. Starting at the 5th fret on the 4th string with your first finger, 5, 6 with your second finger, 7 with your third finger, 8 with your 4th finger. Then for the 3rd string, reach back to the 4th fret with your first finger, 5th fret with your second finger, 6th with your 3rd, 7th fret with your 4th finger, and then slide your 4th finger to the 8th fret. Then reach back to the 4th fret on the 2nd string with your first finger, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret, and slide your 4th finger up to the 8th fret. Onto the 1st string, reaching back to the 4th fret with your first finger. And again, slide from the 7th to the 8th fret with your 4th finger. Now I'll play it, the top tablature staff, going up the chromatic scale in closed position at a faster speed. Now the bottom tablature staff we'll go over at a slower pace. It's the exact same thing but backwards, but the fingering's a little bit different on the way down. You're not going to be sliding with your 4th finger, you're going to be sliding with your first finger back. Let me show you how that's done. The first measure, 8th fret with your 4th finger, 7th with your 3rd, 6th fret with your second finger, 5th fret with your first finger, and then slide your first finger back to the 4th fret. Then reach up for the 8th fret on the 2nd string. Slide back from the 5th to the 4th fret with your first finger, up to the 8th fret on the 3rd string, reaching up with your 4th finger. 7, 6, 5th fret with your first finger, slide your first finger back to the 4th fret. Now going to the 4th string, again reach up to the 8th fret with your 4th finger. Okay, and here it is backwards at a faster speed. Now I'll play through the whole chromatic scale, forwards and backwards at a fast speed. now turn in your books to page number 3. We're going to go over the right hand exercises. Now first I want to show you which notes you're going to be fretting with your left hand on these exercises. There's 3 different ones. We're going to be fretting the same notes with our left hand for all 3 exercises. You'll be having your first finger on the 7th fret on the 3rd string on the note E. Then you're going to be playing the 5th above that. That would be the 9th fret on the 2nd string with your 3rd finger. And you'd probably want to use your 4th finger for the 9th fret on the 1st string for the octave E. So this is basically an E power chord that you're holding down in your left hand. Keep your fingers holding all of the notes down. Now going over to the right hand, I'll go through the first measure for you. Slowly. Okay, and there's repeat signs around it. Just keep repeating that one measure over and over again, keeping it smooth and steady and building up speed gradually. Now moving on to the second measure. This is the second right hand exercise. We're still going to be holding that E power chord in the left hand. This one goes a little bit differently. You're going to be playing the root, the 5th, the octave, then the 5th, root, 5th, octave, 5th. On to the third right hand exercise. Same E power chord with your left hand. With your right hand, you're going to be playing this pattern. Root, root note, 5th, root note, octave, root, octave. This one's a little bit more complicated. Okay, you can practice all of these right hand exercises, different patterns that you can play with your right hand to get your right hand working a little bit more smoothly, jumping and skipping strings and alternating. Remember to try to alternate between your first and second fingers as often as possible. It's the best way to be playing. Just like walking down the street. You don't want to be walking down the street on one leg and then on the other leg for a while and hopping back and forth from one leg to the other. You want to constantly walk from your left, right, just like with your 2 fingers. First finger, second finger, first finger, second finger. It'll keep you smooth and give you more endurance in your playing. Now let's go on to, in the bottom of page 3, the coordination exercise. This is called the killer. Starting at the 10th fret on the 1st string with your 4th finger. Down to the 9th fret with your 3rd finger. Now skip down to the 2nd string, 8th fret with your 2nd finger, 7th fret with your 1st finger, 10th fret on the 2nd string with your 4th finger, 9th fret with your 3rd finger, and then back up to the 1st string, 8th fret with your 2nd finger, 7th fret with your 1st finger. So let me play through just that first measure for you. This is the pattern that we're going to be using. One more time. On to the second measure. We're going to take that entire pattern and move it down 1 string so that we're playing it on the 2nd and the 3rd strings. On to the last measure before the double bar. Okay, this is a little bit more of a difficult pattern than you're used to playing. This is really to strengthen up your right and left hand coordination, to get both hands working together, striking the notes at the same time. Your left hand Once it gets used to the pattern, then you can start working on your right hand, making sure your right hand is alternating and you're building up good technique. And try to remember to use just your fingertips on your left hand and pay close attention to the fingerings. That's why they're written underneath the staffs. They're very important for you to follow. These are the most comfortable ways for you to do it. You may not think so now. You might try to experiment with your own fingerings a little bit, but in the long run, some of those fingerings that you're coming up with on your own might hurt you, so it pays off for you to pay close attention to these now and use these as they're written. Let me play it for you, the killer forwards at a regular speed. Now the last three measures of this exercise are the killer backwards. We're going to do the exact same pattern backwards, starting on the 3rd and 4th strings. 7th fret with your 1st finger on the 3rd string, 8th fret of the 3rd string with your 2nd finger, 3rd finger on the 9th fret of the 4th string, 4th finger on the 10th fret of the 4th string, back to the 7th fret of the 4th string with your 1st finger, 8th fret of the 4th string with your 2nd finger, 9th fret of the 3rd string with your 3rd finger, and 10th fret of the 3rd string with your 4th finger. Here's just that first measure backwards all together. Now for the next measure, we're going to take that pattern and move it up to the 2nd and 3rd strings. And then the last measure. Okay, now let me play through the entire exercise for you from beginning to end, forwards and backwards. Okay, when you're all set, go on to page number 4. We're going to talk about intervals. We did this on the last tape, so I'll go very quickly through this. Interval just means the distance between two notes. We talk about two separate intervals, a whole step and a half step. A half step is the distance of 1 fret on the bass. If you're on a string, say that you're playing this note at the 5th fret on the 3rd string, this note here would be a half step higher. From the same note, if you go 1 fret lower, this note here is a half step lower than the note that you started with. A whole step is the distance of 2 frets. So if we start at this note and we want to play a whole step higher, that note would be right here. Or a whole step lower from that note would be right here. Now in the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, back to A, there's natural half steps and natural whole steps. The natural half steps fall in between the notes B and C and between the notes E and F. So anywhere on the bass that you encounter the notes B and C or the notes E and F, they're always going to be 1 fret apart of each other. All of the notes that are in between, in the whole steps where you have a fret in between, those notes are sharps or flats. And if you look down at the complete musical alphabet, you'll see that I gave you a layout of all of the notes on the 3rd string climbing right up the bass from open all the way to the 12th fret. Look through that and then refer back to the neck diagram on the inside front cover to make sure you understand how the process of half note, half steps and whole steps works and how you can use that to find any note at all on the bass. Now down at the bottom of page 5, we're going to review the C major scale very quickly. Starting on the note C at the 3rd fret on the 3rd string with your 2nd finger. Again, watch the fingering in your left hand on this scale. The fingering's written underneath the staff, and it's very important that you get this down properly. Ending on the note C, the octave or the root note again. We've just traveled from C through the musical alphabet all the way to C again. Okay, now I'm going to go back down the scale at a slower speed, starting with C. Ending on the note C. And you'll notice on the staff in the book that C, the root note, and C, the octave, are circled. These notes are the most important notes in the scale. It gives the scale its name. It's called the key note or the root note. This is what makes this a C major scale. Now I'll play through the scale at a faster speed for you. If you turn over in your books to page number 6, we're going to show you what transposing is all about. Transposing means moving the scale into another key. And we just did the C major scale. What would happen if you wanted to play a G major scale? Well, what you do is you take the pattern, the exact same pattern that we did with the C major scale, but start it and end it on the note G. The C major scale, if you remember it in terms of finger numbers, you would be remembering the pattern like this. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. To do the G major scale, we'll start on the note G at the 3rd fret on the 4th string. And we'll just play up the pattern from there. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. These are finger numbers, remember, not fret numbers. I'm not calling off fret numbers. I'm telling you which fingers you're using. And if you have your 4 fingers over a 4-fret spread, meaning that your first finger is assigned to the 2nd fret, your second finger is assigned to the 3rd fret, your third finger, to the 4th fret, and your 4th finger to the 5th fret, then you should be able to have no problem in transposing the scale and moving the pattern down to this note G. Again, here's the G major scale, forwards and backwards. Now we're going to do the D major scale. Again, we'll take the same finger pattern, but start it on the 5th fret on the 3rd string on the note D. So we're going to play from D up the alphabet to D again. Now remember this in terms of a finger pattern. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. That's backwards. Finally, we'll transpose it to the key of A major. We're going to do an A major scale, starting on the note A at the 5th fret on the 4th string. Now turn in your books to page number 7. We're going to go over the A natural minor scale. The natural minor scale is different from the major scale. It's a minor scale. It's used for minor keys. And this is the A natural minor scale, so it would be in the key of A minor. We're going to start on the note A and end on the note A. Starting on the 5th fret of the 4th string with your 1st finger. 5th fret, 7th fret with your 3rd finger, 8th fret with your 4th finger. Up to the 3rd string, 5th fret with your 1st finger, 7th with your 3rd finger, 8th fret with your 4th finger. Up to the 2nd string, 5th fret with your 1st finger, 7th fret with your 3rd finger at the note A. We've just traveled 1 octave up the A natural minor scale. Now I'll go back down the scale at a slower speed. Okay, and here's that scale fast. And again, you know that the scale starts on the note A and ends on the note A. If you want to transpose this scale to other keys, you already know how to do that from the last page. We did it with the major scales. Now I'm going to talk to you for a second about relative major and minor scales. Relative keys are keys that both contain the same notes. There's something unique about the C major scale and about the A natural minor scale. The C major scale contains no sharps or flats. It just contains natural notes. It goes from C right through the alphabet to C again. It's the only major scale or major key that has no sharps or flats. The A natural minor scale is also unique because it contains no sharps or flats. It goes through the musical alphabet from the note A all the way up to the note A again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And again, it has all natural notes. Now, since both keys, C major and A minor, contain no sharps or flats. They must both contain the exact same notes. The only difference between the two scales is the note that you start and you end on. These are called relative keys. They're related to each other because they have the same family of notes. There's no sharps or flats in either one. If you'll also notice on the page that the minor scale starts on the 6th step of the major scale. Okay, the note A is the 6th note in C major. C, D, E, F, G, A would be the 6th note, and if you begin playing up the same group of notes starting at that note, you'll get the A natural minor scale. Now, C major and A minor, they're both natural keys, and they both contain no sharps or flats. They have the exact same notes, so they're relative keys. Again, in C major, C is the root note, and in A minor, A is the root note, and that's the only difference between the two scales. Moving on to page number 8, we're going to go over the A minor pentatonic scale in root position. And I'll explain to you what root position means in a couple of minutes. Let's just go through the scale first. We did this on tape number 1. It's just going to be a little bit of a review. Let's start at the 5th fret on the 4th string on the note A on the root note. 8th fret with your 4th finger. 5th fret with your 1st. 7th fret with your 3rd finger. 5th fret with your 1st finger. 7th fret with your 3rd finger on the root note A again. Now we're going to continue past that note A into another octave. We're going to go continue up the scale to the next note in the scale, an octave higher. That's the 5th fret on the 1st string with your 1st finger. And then to the 7th fret with your 3rd finger. Let me just play through that position for you at a faster speed. And back down the same position. Okay, this is called root position because this is the position of the neck where your hand is, and we played every single note that we could reach in this key and in this scale without moving our hand down the neck or up the neck. Just in this one place, in this one group of frets, we played every note that we could hit in this key. The circled notes on the tablature staff are the root notes. Those notes are A. And you should know and memorize where these root notes fall in the finger patterns. Remember this as a finger pattern just like the other scales. 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. You need to memorize where these root notes are because when you use these to improvise and solo, you're going to be doing something called playing around the root note. And later on in lesson number 2, I'll give you an example of a solo so that you can see exactly how this works. Now let's compare the minor pentatonic scale with the natural minor scale. Quickly play through the pentatonic, just one octave of it. Take a look at that pattern and now play the A natural minor scale, just one octave. They're basically the same scales. The only difference is that the A natural minor scale contains a couple of different notes. This is where we get the pentatonic scale from. The natural minor scale actually came first. The pentatonic scale is more like a derivative of the scale. They just took a couple of notes out to make it more of a bluesy sounding scale, more of a rock and roll type of scale. Now we'll learn some techniques that you're going to be using in your improvisation. The first one will be a slide, and you'll see how it's notated on the tablature staff in your book. If you put your finger, or your 1st or 3rd finger you can do this with, on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, play the note, and after playing it, slide your 1st finger up the neck, or 3rd finger up the neck to the 9th fret. Here it is with your 3rd finger. Now here it is with your 1st finger. That's called a slide. The next measure you'll see a hammer-on. It's a thing called a hammer-on. What you do with this is you play the 1st note. The 2nd note doesn't get played with your right hand. All you do is hammer your 3rd finger down onto the neck for the other note after you've struck the 1st note with your right hand. So put your 1st finger on the 5th fret on the 3rd string. Play that note with your right hand, and instead of playing the next note with your right hand, just slam your 3rd finger right down onto the neck. You're hammering your finger onto the note. And that's called a hammer-on. Now, on to the next measure, we're going to do something called a pull-off, which is kind of the opposite of a hammer-on. Put your third finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. Have your first finger set and ready, pressing down at the 5th fret on the same string. Now, play the note at the 7th fret with your right hand. And pull your third finger off. You pull down and off. It's called a pull-off or a snap-off. Instead of playing both notes individually with your right hand, you're just playing the first one and pulling your third finger off to get the sound of the other note. And then finally, the last measure is a combination hammer and pull-off. Now you're going to have your first finger set at the 5th fret on the 3rd string, hammer down your third finger at the 7th fret, and pull your third finger off back to the note at the 5th fret. So the only note that you're striking with your right hand is the first note in that group of 3. The last 2 notes, you're not playing with your right hand at all. Okay, using the hammer and pull-off techniques, let's go on to the hammer pull-off pattern. We're going to use the minor pentatonic scale in root position, starting at the 5th fret on the 4th string with your first finger. I'm going to go through it for you first at a slow speed. Here's the first measure. Let me play that first measure for you again. 5, 8, and then up to the 3rd string you're going to do a hammer pull-off. Second measure. Third measure. Remember, on those groups of hammer pull-offs, there's an arch connecting the notes on the tablature staff. They're grouped off in groups of 3 notes, and the only one that you're striking with your right hand will be the first note of that group of 3. Let me play through the first 3 measures for you at a faster speed. Okay, now the last 3 measures, we're going to go down the scale in a different type of pattern, still using hammers and pull-offs. The first measure sounds like this. Let me play that for you one more time. On to the second measure. On to the third measure. And the last 3 measures at a regular speed sounds like this. Now let me play up and down the entire hammer pull-off pattern for you. Okay, once you get set with that, let's go on and learn the second position scale of the minor pentatonics. This is the A minor pentatonic scale in second position. I explained to you what root position or first position meant. And the reason we called it first position or root position was because that particular position, we started with the root note. The first note in that position was the root note of the scale, or the note A. This is called second position because we're going to start this scale on the second note of the scale. We're going to play the exact same notes from the same key, but in a different place on the neck. And the reason we learn different positions is that so instead of being able to improvise in the key of A minor in one place on the neck, you can improvise all over the neck in all different positions using the minor pentatonic scales. So we're going to cover the entire neck by the time we finish this lesson. Starting at the 8th fret with your second finger, on the 4th string, with your second finger at the 8th fret, onto the 10th fret with your 4th finger, up to the 3rd string, first finger at the 7th fret, 4th finger at the 10th fret, up to the 2nd string, first finger at the 7th fret. And you'll notice that note is circled. That's the note A. Again, it's the root note of the scale. Memorize where that is in the pattern. Up to the 10th fret with your 4th finger. Continuing on, 7th fret of the 1st string with your 1st finger, and 9th fret of the same string with your 3rd finger. Now let me go back down that position. Again, make sure you're using the correct fingers in your left hand to finger this scale with, And try to keep alternating the fingers on your right hand. It's very important that you keep that smooth. Also, as you're learning these scales, memorize the fingerings, memorize where they are, and remember where the root notes are in each and every position. That's going to be very important to you later on when you want to move these around and when you want to use these for soloing. Let me play through the second position scale for you at a faster speed. Now, continuing on, turn over to page number 10. We're going to go on to the third position scale. Starting at the 10th fret on the 4th string, we're going to start on the 3rd note in the key of A minor pentatonic. This is the 3rd note of the scale. With your 1st finger at the 10th fret on the 4th string, 3rd finger at the 12th fret, 1st finger at the 10th fret on the 3rd string, 3rd finger at the 12th fret, up to the 2nd string, 1st finger at the 10th fret, and now you're going to be using your 4th finger. Crunch your hand together and put your 4th finger at the 12th fret. This is so that when we go up to the 1st string, you can reach back with your 1st finger to the 9th fret comfortably. Then move up to the 12th fret with your 4th finger. Going back down that same position. 12th fret with your 4th finger, 9th fret with your 1st finger, 12th fret with your 4th finger, and then move your hand together and play the 10th fret with your 1st finger. 12th fret on the 3rd string with your 3rd finger, 10th fret with your 1st, 12th fret with your 3rd finger, and 10th fret with your 1st finger. Also, remember where that root note A is. It's this note right here, 12th fret on the 3rd string. Now I'm going to play through the scale for you at a faster speed. Moving on to the 4th position scale. Again, we're climbing up the neck. We're going to go to the 12th fret, starting at the 12th fret with your 1st finger on the 4th string, starting on the 4th note of the A minor pentatonic scale. 15th fret with your 4th finger, up to the 3rd string, 12th fret with your 1st on the note A. There's the root note again. Memorize where that is in the pattern. 15th fret with your 4th finger, up to the 2nd string, 12th fret with your 1st finger, 14th fret with your 3rd finger, finally up to the 1st string, 12th fret with your 1st finger, and 14th fret on the root note A with your 3rd finger. Memorize where this note is in the pattern. Know that it's the root note and it's the note A. Now I'm going to play up and down the scale for you at a faster speed. Okay, now moving down to page number 11, you'll see that we're still working with the 4th position scale. Since the scale itself started at the 12th fret, there were no notes before the 12th fret, all of these notes that we just played at the 12th fret and up can be transposed an octave lower. We're going to move this scale down and fit it into the beginning of the neck, all the way down at the 1st fret in open position. We're going to start off with the open 4th string, then the 3rd fret, then the open 3rd string, the root note A, then the 3rd fret, open 2nd string, 2nd fret, open 1st string, 2nd fret on the root note A again. Okay, notice the similarities between the 4th position scale at the 12th fret and the 4th position scale in open position. Don't let this fool you, the fact that you're not fretting the notes that are being played on this side of the string. Open notes are automatically fretted for you. It's just like you were given an extra finger. It's a gift. Take advantage of it. Make sure you can understand how to transpose patterns from open position to closed position. Now finally we'll go on to the 5th position scale at the bottom of page 11. 3rd fret with your 2nd finger on the 4th string, 5th fret with your 4th finger, 3rd fret of the 3rd string with your 2nd finger, 5th with your 4th finger, 2nd fret with your 1st finger on the 2nd string, 5th fret with your 4th finger, 2nd fret on the 1st string with your 1st finger, and 5th fret with your 4th finger. Also, memorize where the root notes are in that scale. You have one at the 5th fret on the 4th string, and one at the 2nd fret on the 1st string. I'm going to play up and back down the scale at a faster speed. Okay, now if you turn over in your books to page number 12, there's a diagram there that shows you all 5 positions laid out on the neck, from the nut or open position all the way up to the 12th fret. We start with the 4th position scale, move into the 5th position scale, then into the root position scale or 1st position, to the 2nd position scale, and to the 3rd position scale. All of these notes that are in each one of these positions belong in the A minor pentatonic scales. There's only actually 5 different notes in the entire scale, and that's why we have 5 different positions. We start the scale on each of the different 5 notes, and you'll notice in the chart how they overlap each other, how you can play back and forth from one position to the other. Now, I'd like you to memorize every single one of these positions, where the root notes are, and get the fingerings down. And then when you come back to lesson number 2, we're going to show you how to connect from position to position, sliding around the neck a little bit. And I'll give you an example of a bass solo written in the key of A minor using the minor pentatonics so that you can get an idea of how these work and how to improvise with them. We'll be back in just a minute with lesson number 2. Okay, turning your books to page number 13, we're going to go on to lesson number 2, connecting positions. Now, if you have all of your positions down from lesson number 1 from the minor pentatonic scales, I'm going to show you now how to bridge from position to position, sliding up and back from one position to the other. There's a couple of places that are really comfortable to be doing this with. First, we're going to move from the 5th position scale to the root position scale. So we're going to start at the 3rd fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger. We're going up the 5th position scale now. Now right here at the 5th fret on the 3rd string, you're going to slide with your 3rd finger up to the 7th fret. Now we're in the root position scale, and we'll just continue right up the root position scale from there. Remember, keep track of where your root notes are. That's very important for you to be able to use these to solo and play bass riffs. I'll go right up and down that position. On the way up, we're going to move from the 5th position to root position, sliding up with your 3rd finger. Now I'm going to play back down root position and slide to 5th position, but you slide back with your 1st finger from the 5th fret to the 3rd fret on the 3rd string, and now we're in the 5th position scale again. Now here's that at a regular speed. Now turn over to page number 14. We're going to connect from the 3rd position scale to the 4th position scale, starting at the 10th fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger in the 3rd position. You're going to start going right up the 3rd position scale. On the 2nd string, when you reach the 12th fret with your 3rd finger, you're going to slide your 3rd finger up to the 14th fret. And now we're in the 4th position scale. Continuing on. And back down the 4th position scale. At this point right here, we're going to slide back to the 3rd position scale with your 1st finger. And continue right down the 3rd position scale again. Now I'll play through that for you again at a faster speed. These are just a couple of ideas of how to move from position to position. You could probably find plenty of ways to do this on your own, moving from position to position. Next thing that we have on page number 15 is going to be the pentatonic solo. And this is a solo that will take you through all 5 positions, show you how to move from place to place on the neck, and how to play around the root note like we were discussing before. You want to stay mostly on the note A, wherever you may encounter it on the bass. The bass fills that you're going to play are going to be quick things, and the only time you're going to be staying on one note for a length of time will be on the root notes or the note A. So start in the 5th position scale at the 5th fret of the 4th string with your 3rd finger. I'm going to go through the solo for you slowly first, note by note, measure by measure, and then we'll go through it at a faster pace along with the drum track. The first measure, 2nd, 3rd are all in the 5th position scale. We're on the note A now. And that was the top line, top tablature staff, the first 3 measures. Follow along with me in the book as I'm doing this, and then try to play it afterwards, after you understand where everything is on the neck and where your fingers are supposed to be going. Continuing on to the 2nd tablature staff down, we're going to start out in the 5th position scale and move up to the root position scale. Onto the 5th measure. Next measure, we're still in the root position scale. Down to the 3rd tablature staff, still in the root position scale. Remember those hammer pull-offs. Right here we're going to slide up to the 2nd position scale. And now sliding up to the 3rd position scale. Bottom tablature staff in the 3rd position scale. Sliding up to the 4th position scale. Last measure. The notes in parentheses mean to play it as a chord. Both strings, 1st and 2nd strings, on the 14th fret, barring both notes with your 3rd finger. Press down both notes at the same time and play both notes simultaneously with your right hand. You should play with your right hand. The 1st finger should be playing the 2nd string, and your 2nd finger should be playing the 1st string. You can pull both strings simultaneously to produce the chord. Then you slide the chord down the neck, and the last note would be the open 3rd string, or open A. Now I'm going to play through the entire solo for you along with the drum track at a little bit of a faster speed at a regular steady tempo. Okay, now I'm going to play through this for you at a fast speed. This is regular heavy metal blazing rock speed. Okay, so you can get an idea of what it means to be playing around the root note, using the root note as your starting point and ending point, and how to connect from position to position by going around the root note. Now if you'll turn to your page number 16 in your books, we're going to start talking about arpeggios. Now, the word arpeggio actually means broken chord. When a guitar player plays a chord, it's made up of different notes. The notes that go into that chord are the notes in the arpeggios. These notes are called the root, the third, and the fifth. And what they would be is the root note of the scale that fits against the chord. You take the third note of the scale and the fifth note of the scale. And those three notes are what collectively make up the chord that the guitar player is playing. Now, these notes would obviously be your first choices to use as notes for improvisation, since they fit right along with the chord. Now, the notes in a C major arpeggio we can find by going up the C major scale. Everybody go to your C major scale, third fret with your second finger. We're going to take the first note, then we're going to take the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. And these are the notes that go into a C major chord. You can also add the octave C on top of that with your fourth finger. Your book goes into a little bit more detail of how the arpeggios are derived from the scales and what the fingerings are all about. Just remember that you're using the root, the third, and the fifth. Those intervals are very important. Now, to get an A minor arpeggio, we're going to use the A natural minor scale. Starting at the fifth fret on the fourth string with your first finger, we're going to take the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. And we can also add the octave on top of that. This would be an A minor arpeggio. Okay, and again, you can see the arpeggio fingerings at the bottom of page 12. Now we're going to go on to page number 13. I'm going to be doing the arpeggio riffs, and this is from the Metallica bass solo Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. Okay, we're going to start at the 12th fret on the second string on the note D, and we're going to be playing a D minor arpeggio for the first two measures. It's going to sound like this. Now for the next two measures, we're going to play a C major arpeggio, sliding down to the 10th fret. Put your second finger on the 10th fret of the second string. Then you'll notice the repeat sign, so go back and do the top line over again. Last two measures on the C major arpeggio. Next line, back to the D minor arpeggio again. Now moving up to an E minor arpeggio, starting at the 14th fret on the note E. Then an F major arpeggio, starting at the 15th fret on the note F at the second string. Down to the E minor arpeggio again. Now the last two measures are on D minor and C major, played a little bit differently. Okay, and that's as far as we're taking this solo. Let me play it for you at a little bit of a faster speed. Okay, now move on to page number 19. We're going to go through the alternate arpeggio fingerings. It's going to give you a couple of different ways of playing the same arpeggios. You should notice that there's different ways of playing everything on the bass because notes get repeated all over the neck. Like this note in particular can be played in a couple of different places. It's not necessarily just played in one place. You already know the arpeggio fingerings for the major chords that are like this, and for the minor chords that are like this. Let's go through some alternate ones. First, for the C major arpeggio, if we start the arpeggio with our first finger instead of our second finger, you can reach up for the third of the chord at the 7th fret with your 4th finger. It's kind of a stretch. Then with your second finger, play the notes at the 5th fret, the 5th in the octave. Let me play through that for you again. Okay, the other C major arpeggio fingering would be as if you started at the same note C at the 8th fret on the 4th string. This is the same pitch as the note that we started with here. It's the exact same note, just played in a different place on the bass. And this would be the arpeggio fingering starting on the root note with your 4th finger. Again. Okay, now for the A minor arpeggios. We already know this one. The first one that you'll see on the page starts with your second finger at the 5th fret. Reach back with your first finger, it's kind of a stretch, to the 3rd fret on the 3rd string. Stretch up with your 4th finger to the 7th fret and play the 5th and then the octave with your 4th finger. Let me go up and back down that for you one more time. Okay, and now finally we're going to start the A minor arpeggio with your 4th finger on the same note at the 5th fret of the 4th string. These are just alternate fingerings that you can use while you're using the arpeggios so that you don't have to worry about starting on any particular finger. If you're in a place and you need to play an arpeggio, whether you're playing the root note with your 1st, 2nd, or 4th finger, you'll be able to do it if you memorize these patterns. Now if you move on to page number 20, we're going to finish out lesson number 2. I'm going to show you how you can use these arpeggios to play some riffs throughout bass lines. Now I'll have a guitar and drum track going along with it, first at a slow speed, and I'll demonstrate what it's going to sound like to you, and then we'll go through and show it to you at a faster speed with the guitar and the drum tracks. Okay, now here it is at a faster speed. It's going to be the exact same fingering, exact same arpeggio patterns, but played faster. Okay, now make sure you get everything down that we've covered in lesson number 2. Make sure you understand how to move around the neck using the pentatonics. You should be having some fun with those by now. Play some different patterns using them. Try to make up your own solos and create your own styles using the scales. Make sure you memorized where the root notes are and all the scales, because later on we're going to show you how to move these to different keys. Now also make sure that you understand arpeggios, what arpeggios are and how you can use them in your bass lines. And then we're going to go on to lesson number 3, and we'll be covering harmonics, some two-handed bidextral hammer-ons, and lots of other great stuff. See you in a couple minutes. Continuing on tape number 2, we're going to go on to lesson 3. The first thing we're going to cover is harmonics. Everybody turn in your books to page number 21. Okay. There's a chart there that represents the neck of your bass. It's going to show you where on the bass you can play harmonics and what notes they would be. Now, let me first explain to you what a harmonic is. Okay. Everybody go to the 12th fret of your bass with your left hand. lightly rest one of the fingers on your left hand right above the fret, right above the metal bar for the 12th fret. And don't push the string down, just lightly rest your finger there. Now play the string with your right hand. Once you've played it, you can take your left hand away from the note. It'll still ring out. This is called a harmonic, and what it is a phenomena of physics. This point right here at the 12th fret divides the neck of the bass exactly in half. Not just the neck, the length of the string, I'm sorry, exactly in half. All the way from the bridge, all the way to the nut. The distance from the bridge to the nut is the length of the string. When you play it open, it vibrates in one section from those 2 points. Now if you lightly touch the place at the 12th fret, which is exactly half the distance, you set up 2 sets of vibrations. One set of vibrations from the bridge to the 12th fret, and another vibration from the 12th fret back to the nut. And the note that you get would be an octave higher from the open string. Now as you continue up the harmonic scale, what we do is we divide the string into 3 equal sections. If you play a harmonic with the exact same technique, you just lightly rest your finger there as you play the note at the 7th fret on the first string. The string will vibrate in 3 equal sections. From the nut to the 7th fret, from the 7th fret up to the 19th fret, and from the 19th fret all the way up to the bridge. You can also divide the string into 4 equal sections. You have a harmonic here at the 5th fret, and as we keep going up, the harmonics get higher in pitch. We have one at the 4th fret, one just before the 3rd fret, on the other side of the 3rd fret, and a little bit further past that between the 2nd and 3rd frets. Okay, and this is how the harmonic scale goes right up the neck. You can go from the 12th fret, continuing up the harmonic scale, and get to notes that are really high in pitch, that are out of the range of your bass. The one odd thing about harmonics is that they don't adhere to the regular rules of finding notes on the bass. It kind of takes all the notes and makes a jigsaw puzzle out of them. So you really have to learn these harmonics individually and separately. A good way to remember them is if you start at the first harmonic at the 12th fret and call that harmonic the root note, because it's the same name as the open string, the next harmonic up would be a 5th above that. And then the next harmonic up would be an octave higher than the root note that you started with. The note above that would be a major 3rd, the note above that would be a 5th, and it continues on up. There's a flatted 7th and also another octave. We'll be getting into the 7ths later on tape number 3. But if you remember them in terms of intervals, you can find them from any string that you decide to work with, whether it's G, D, A, or E, if you can find it by intervals. Now I'm going to show you one little trick that you can use harmonics for. You can tune your bass with harmonics. If you look down at the chart, you'll notice that the harmonic at the 7th fret, D, on the first string G, is note D, and the harmonic at the 5th fret on the 2nd string is also the note D. And that's a pattern that matches up for the other strings also. A and A on the 2nd and 3rd strings, and E and E on the 3rd and 4th strings. Now you can use these to tune your bass with. Say that your first string on your bass is the only string that's in tune on your bass. If you play the harmonic at the 7th fret and the harmonic at the 5th fret on the 2nd string and let both ring out together, they're the exact same note. So if you hear a pitch wave or if you hear vibrations happening, you can tune the 2nd string to the 1st string until the vibrations stop, because those 2 harmonics are the same notes. Now once you have those 2 strings tuned, you can tune your 3rd string to your 2nd string by matching up those 2 harmonics. Matter of fact, I'll tune right now. And now onto the 4th string. Now continuing on, turn your books to page number 22. Here's another thing that you can do with harmonics. These are arpeggios with harmonics. We're going to start at the 5th fret on the 1st string with your 3rd finger, playing the harmonic there, then the harmonic at the 4th fret, and the harmonic before the 3rd fret with your 1st finger. And that makes up an arpeggio. Now, since we're on the G string, that would be a G major arpeggio. The next measure would be a D major arpeggio. Same frets, same fingers. Onto the 3rd string, we'll play an A major arpeggio in the same place. And on the 4th string, we'll play an E major arpeggio. Now, for the rest of the exercise, we're just going to go backwards through each arpeggio. Okay, you can start getting used to using some of these harmonics. Later on tape number 4, when we get into all the hot metal techniques, we're going to be doing lots of stuff with harmonics. We're going to be voicing chords with harmonics, tapping harmonics on the neck, playing false harmonics, and showing you how to use these in your solos. Now, if you go on to page number 23, we're just going to get started with the basic bidextral hammer-ons, showing you a little bit about the two-handed techniques. It all involves hammering and pull-offs. Now, the first measure in the group there is at the 9th fret on the 1st string and the 2nd fret on the 1st string. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take your right hand and bring it all the way over onto the neck so that your 1st finger is at the 9th fret, your 1st finger on your right hand. Your 2nd finger on your left, your 1st finger on your left hand should be at the 2nd fret, fretting the note. It should just stay there holding that note down. And what you're going to do is you're going to hammer your index finger on your right hand down at the 9th fret. Hammer it down hard enough to get that note to ring out. And after you've hammered it down, pull that finger off. And the note that's ringing out now will be the note at the 2nd fret on the same string. Hammer it down, pull it off. Do this slowly and steadily. Now, you'll notice that my index finger on my right hand, I'm pulling up. A lot of people do this in different ways. A lot of guitar players will push down in order to pull off with their right hand, and yet still some guitar players will pull back and diagonally. You should experiment with all 3 different ways. See which way is more comfortable for you and which one makes most sense for you to play. In any event, you should build it up slowly and smoothly. Moving on to the 2nd measure, we're going to add another note to this configuration. We're still at the 9th fret with your 1st finger and at the 2nd fret with your 1st finger on your left hand, but you're going to be adding your 4th finger at the 5th fret, and we're going to be doing groups of 3 notes. First, you hammer down with your right hand at the 9th fret, pull off to the note at the 2nd fret, and then hammer your 4th finger on your left hand down at the 5th fret. And that's the group of 3 notes that you're going to keep repeating. Now, the trick is, once you start repeating it over and over again, you'll notice that when my index finger on my right hand is coming down, my pinky is going up right away, so that the note at the 2nd fret on the 1st string is going to be all set to be ringing out and playing. Build up speed slowly, gradually, keeping it smooth and steady. Okay, now finally the last measure. We're going to take the same notes, but we're going to play it in a different way. You're going to tap the note at the 9th fret with your right hand. When you pull that note off, you'll be pulling off to the note at the 5th fret. So your pinky, your 4th finger on your left hand should be the one that's all set. And then you pull your 4th finger off on your left hand to get to the note at the 2nd fret using your 1st finger. So your 1st and 4th fingers should be down while you're tapping with your right hand. And your 1st finger on your left hand should be down at the 2nd fret at all times in all 3 of these exercises. You can use this technique, try a couple of different things with it. We're going to get into lots of stuff on tape number 4, again, with the bidextral hammer-ons. Now, if you go on to page number 24, we're going to take a look at the chart for transposing the minor pentatonic scales. At this point, it might be a good time for you to stop the tape and just review the positions for the A minor pentatonic scales and make sure you understand where the root notes are. Now, looking at the chart, this chart goes by root note. You have a column down the left-hand side of the chart that says 1st string, 2nd string, 3rd string, 4th string. And above the chart, you have 1st finger or 3rd finger. Now, what this means is that when you're playing the root note of the scale with your 1st finger on the 1st string, you're going to be using the 5th position scale. And you should know that from the A minor pentatonic scale, 5th position scale. The root note A on the 1st string is at the 2nd fret, and you're using your 1st finger to fret that note with. Around that root note, we're going to be playing the 5th position scale. If you move along to the other side of the page, and you'll see if you're playing the root note with your 3rd finger on the 1st string, you should be on the 4th position scale. Again, let's go up to the 14th fret on the 1st string. Think about your 4th position scale, the A minor pentatonics. Have your 3rd finger at the 14th fret on the 1st string on the root note A. Right there you should be around your 4th position scale, and you should be able to play your 4th position scale around that note. This is how this whole chart works, string by string, finger by finger, so that you know when you're playing a particular root note on any string with any finger on the bass, you can play a particular pentatonic scale around that note. And this will help you to move this scale into other keys. Now we're going to go through and move the minor pentatonics into the key of E minor down on page number 25. Okay, so everybody follow along with me, starting at the 12th fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger on the note E. This is the root note E. And from the chart, that told you that if you're playing the root note with your 1st finger on the 4th string, you would be in your 1st position scale or root position scale. And there are the root notes. Now let's take that and move it down an octave. Now we're going to go on to the 2nd position scale, which is going to start at the 3rd fret on the 4th string with your 2nd finger. There's the root note E. Continuing on up to the 3rd position scale at the 5th fret on the 4th string. And pause on the root note E with your 3rd finger on the 3rd string, and you should be in the 3rd position scale. Moving on up to the 4th position scale. 7th fret with your 1st finger on the 4th string. And here's the root note E at the 7th fret on the 3rd string using your 1st finger. Also E again on the 1st string using your 3rd finger. Back down the scale. Going on to the 5th position scale finally. At the 10th fret on the 4th string with your 2nd finger. Okay, so now we just took all of the minor pentatonic scales and moved them from the key of A into the key of E. And if you're comfortable with that, you should try to move them into other keys, D minor, G minor, all sorts of different keys that you might find comfortable or popular in other songs that you'll be using the pentatonics in a lot. Okay, now stop. Before you go on to lesson number 4, I'd like you to go on to page number 26 and just take a look through those scales. We'll be going through the blues scale in lesson number 4. And what the blues scale is just a variation of the pentatonic scale. We've taken the pentatonic scale and added one extra note to it. And it kind of changes the fingerings a little bit. So I'd like you to take a look through that by yourself before going through it with the tape, and then we'll go through it together when we come back in lesson number 4. Okay, we're going to finish off tape number 2 now, the intermediate tape, with lesson 4. In lesson 4, we're just going to be manipulating those minor pentatonic scales a couple more ways. We're going to do the E blues scale, and we're also going to do the G major pentatonic scales. Now, the E blues scale, I asked you to go through these a little bit first before we start the lesson. I'd like you to get used to the fingerings because they've been changed a little bit to accommodate this extra note that we're adding in. You'll notice on the tablature staff there's a box circling the note that's been added, and on the finger chart there's X's where those added notes are. There's one note added to the E minor pentatonic scale to get the E blues scale. Now we're going to start with the first position scale. Everybody look at my left hand. Down in the first position, open E to the 3rd fret, continuing up the E minor pentatonic scale as normal. Now we're just going to add this extra note at the 1st fret on the 3rd string. Here's the root note E. Again, the root note E didn't change. We're still in the key of E, but these are called the blues scale. It's just a variation on the minor pentatonic scale. And also you can reach that extra note. It's called the blues tone or the blues tritone. Now just so you can recognize the sound, it's kind of familiar to you, I'll play a couple of riffs using this scale, the blues scale, just so that you could recognize the sound of this. Now moving on to the 2nd position scale, we're going to go on to 2nd position starting with your 1st finger on the 3rd fret instead of with your 2nd finger. This is where I meant that the fingerings had to be manipulated a little bit. Here's this extra tone at the 6th fret. Now reach back to the 2nd fret and continue up the fingering as normal. Here's the extra tone again. Now back down the scale. On to the 3rd position scale, starting at the 5th fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger. Here's where the fingering changes again. Now moving on to the 4th position scale, starting at the 7th fret with your 1st finger. On to the 5th position scale. This is another fingering that's been manipulated to accommodate the blues tritone. And I'll repeat the 1st position up at the octave for you, starting at the 12th fret. Now the blues scales and the minor pentatonic scales are kind of interchangeable. You can be playing a solo using the minor pentatonics and every now and then throw in that extra added blues note. You don't have to strictly use the blues note every time you want to play using the blues scale. It's either the pentatonic or the blues scale. It's just adding an extra note to it. And I've just given you some comfortable ways of adding that note to every position. Now if you go on to page number 28 in your books, we'll go to the G major pentatonic scales. Now, remembering way back in the beginning of this tape where we talked about relative keys, C major and A minor were relative keys because they contained the same notes. Now, G major pentatonic and E minor pentatonic are also relative keys. Now, the way you can find this is if you just use the regular G major scale, starting at the note G on the 4th string with your 2nd finger, the 3rd fret, go up the G major scale to the 6th note of the scale, which would be where your relative minor starts. You end up on the note E, so the relative minor scale to G major would be E minor. Now we've used the E minor pentatonics, which were a derivative of the natural minor scale. The G major pentatonic is a derivative of the G major scale, and since they're relative keys, they both contain the same notes. G major pentatonic and E minor pentatonic both contain the same notes. So all 5 position scales are going to be exactly the same, fingerings, frets, everything. The only difference is going to be you have to switch your root notes. Your root notes are going to be the notes G now, not the notes E anymore. So you're going to have to memorize where the G's are on your bass in every position so that you can play around G as the root note, so that you'll be doing a major pentatonic solo rather than a solo in a separate key. Okay, now if you look at in your book, you can see how the major pentatonic scale compares with the major scale itself. This would be 1 octave of the G major pentatonic scale, starting at the 3rd fret on the 4th string with your 2nd finger. We just subtracted a couple of notes from the major scale and derived the major pentatonic scale. Now, since we're starting on the root note G, in E minor pentatonic, don't get confused now, this was 2nd position in E minor pentatonic, but since we're starting on the note G now, and G is the root note, this is going to be the root position scale in G major pentatonic. And again, it's the exact same fingering as you had before, because they're relative keys and they both contain the same notes. Now, looking down to page 29, we have all 5 positions, adding the blues tritone to the major pentatonics of the G major pentatonic scale. And the root notes are circled so that you can see where the notes G are. Let's just go through and play these very quickly. I'm going to go right up and down each scale and pause on the notes G. Next position. Next position. Up to the next position. To the next position. And finally, we'll repeat the 5th position scale at the 12th fret. Now, just to show you how these can be used for a solo, if you turn over to page number 30, we're going to finish off this tape with a G major pentatonic solo. First thing I'm going to do is play it along slowly with the drum track, and then I'll show it to you at a regular speed. Okay, now I'm going to play it for you at a little bit of a faster speed. Okay, this marks the end of the intermediate tape, tape number 2. There was an awful lot of material covered here on this tape. We went through all of the pentatonic scales, and those are all the scales that you're going to be using for most of your rock and metal soloing and improvisation. So you should really work hard to get these scales down. And after finishing and learning all of the material on this tape, you should be able to get out in the forefront of your stage and get into the limelight. Now, In tapes number 3 and 4, we're going to go into the really advanced stuff. We're going to go through all of the hot techniques, bidextral hammer-ons, all of the harmonics techniques, and we're going to show you how to make up your own advanced soloing. We're also going to learn the modes. We're going to be doing 2-octave arpeggios, things like harmonic minor scales, and all of the latest techniques that are being used in rock and metal today. So practice real hard, and we'll see you on tape number 3, Advanced A.